Hello, my name is Caroline Nettle and my website is spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk, and I am going to do today's video about how to unlearn what you learnt about relationships watching the relationships around you as you were growing up. And the reason for this is we are in a time where what I'm seeing is lots and lots of relationships are much more superficial, perhaps is the right word, than they used to be. And I'm always joking with my friends that in my parents' era, you sort of just picked someone and stuck with them through thick or thin. It was very, very rare to get divorced. And then I'm sort of early 50s and I'm watching, you know, most of my friends now have had one or more marriages. And I learnt when I was working in the treatment centre and have learnt through the work that I've done with individuals lots and lots of ways of looking at where we learn about relationships. And from about the age of, say, 0 to 7, we are effectively just sponges. We need to be this way. It's a survival instinct that kicks in properly because our parents or primary caregivers are supposed to keep us safe. They're supposed to teach us how to cope with life. They're supposed to teach us many, many things. And of course, most parents do the very best that they can. Some really leave a lot to be required and others perhaps do a little bit too much. But you as the child, so be you a boy or a girl, will look to your parents for many years, 0 to 7 very much so, and beyond that into your teenage years as you are starting to look at the opposite sex and notice the opposite sex and things like that. You will be looking to your primary caregivers, usually mum and dad, for how to do relationships. And most of this is so deeply ingrained you probably wouldn't know that this is how you're operating. So what I've done is I've taken a few characteristics and I'm going to just talk about them and show them how they can affect you later on in life if this is what happened in your childhood. So if you have mum and dad, they're very loving, they deeply respect each other, they're very caring for each other, and it's a happy home, I'd like to say you're incredibly lucky. Well done you for picking fantastic parents, and hopefully you will go on and have, replicate essentially for yourself, relationships that are loving, caring, respectful, and honouring of the other person. I would say that would put you in a very small percentage of people on the planet today. So let's deal with the other kind of parenting. So if mum or dad, let's talk about addictions first, because this is something that's very prevalent in our parents' generation, in our generation, in our children's generation. So if you have a father that was working all the time, you know, completely addicted to work, had all his self-worth from how much he earned, how high he rose in his profession, etc., etc., you will learn as a child that absenteeism, it can be your fault. Some children believe that you know, dad works all the time because I'm not a very nice child. That is one thing. But generally, if you've had a father who is extremely absent due to his work, or he's always in the pub, or he's always with the football people, whatever it is, generally what that translates to, especially in women, but also men, is you will go for partners in your relationships that are absent. So that may not mean that they're physically absent, but they're unavailable to you emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, etc. So if dad, for example, and I'm saying dad and it could just as easily have been mum, was absent all the time, you will go for people that are absent to you in your relationship. If mum was overly subservient to dad, who was perhaps a bit controlling or had a strong personality, then you will have learnt that a woman's place is in the kitchen, doing whatever the man says, etc, etc, etc. So you will have seen that side of what mum did, and your nature will either be to completely reject that or believe that that is your role as well. So complete subservience to the partner who is the stronger hand, etc. If there was a lot of deceit in your parents' marriage, you know, the sort of thing like, don't tell your mother, don't tell your father, I've bought this pair of shoes and they're really expensive and I don't want him to know that I'm spending our money, or don't tell your mother I've been down to the pub, you know, I told her I was going somewhere else. You will accept a lot more deceitful behaviour in your own relationships because that's normal to you. So either you may well become slightly manipulative or deceitful yourself, or you will attract someone to you who finds it very challenging to be honest and open and upfront. I'm going to go through all the lists of what the behaviours are, and then we'll talk afterwards about how to unlearn them. There are parents out there, I haven't witnessed it myself in anyone that I know, but sometimes parents can completely suffocate their children emotionally. Where are you? How long are you going to be? Who are you going to be with? You know, come back to me, da da da. Like worrying, not allowing them to express themselves in any ways other than the way that the mother wants or the father wants. Being emotionally suffocated as a child is fairly challenging. One of those, my mother was suffocating, but in a completely different way. Either way, you will have problems in your relationship because you will expect usually constant attention, because that's what you were getting from your mother. Constant attention. So you will most likely attract to yourself somebody who is not able to be that attention giving to you, or someone who totally suffocates you. Both of those are very unhealthy. But that's what you saw growing up, so that's what you expect. Now, nobody's at fault. Usually, for example, a suffocating parent may well have had suffocating parents, or parents that totally and utterly abandoned them, in which case they've gone to the other extreme. So another thing that is really prevalent in people when they're first starting to have relationships is their mum and dad will have taught them how to argue. And there's lots of different ways of arguing. So mum can be someone who just sulks. So dad says, I don't like the tea, whatever. All of these scenarios are completely and utterly made up, but very probable. So dad makes a comment about the tea that wasn't very nice. Mum doesn't talk to him for a few days. Now, if the child is watching that, she will learn, as soon as I don't get my own way, I just stop talking. Which you can imagine how complicated and horrible that would be in an adult relationship. But as a child, it makes sense to her because that's what my mum does. What else? So if both parents just scream and scream and scream and scream and scream and nobody's listening to anyone and nobody's heard, then you can imagine that the child growing up in that will expect that arguments go that way. That's how they went to my house. I don't know any different. So for them, that will be a case of learning how to argue effectively, because that's really, really ineffective. So we've got sulking, we've got screaming, we've got just simply not talking at all, never addressing any of the issues, never talking about anything, which is really being very avoidant, and the children learn not to ever have conflict, which makes them extremely uncomfortable around conflict and possibly very bad at conflict. And that's a skill set that they need to learn because it hasn't been taught to them by mum or dad. What other ways of arguing are there? So there's a rational, let's sit down, let's not get emotional, let's not take it personally. I need to tell you how this is affecting me. I want to listen to how it's affecting you, and we need to come to some sort of a compromise. That's pretty ideal. And if you had parents that talk like that, again, congratulations, that's amazing. But anything else, as you can see, would mean that you quite possibly argue in a very destructive way in your relationship today. So what else do I want to say? So one of my favourite ways of explaining why relationships can struggle is because we go into a relationship with all our expectations in place. And a very, very good example, I honestly can't remember who told me this, but somebody once said that it's like a new couple going into Christmas for the first time. She, in her family, Christmas is you open a couple of presents early in the morning, you go for a really long walk with the dog, and you have Christmas dinner in a pub somewhere, and then you have the really long walk back, and then you have the rest of your presents, you might have a couple of drinks, and then it's bedtime. A few Christmas carols, and then it's bedtime. He comes from a family where you open up your presents straight away in the morning, you open the champagne, you all sit round in front of the telly and eat far too much and use it as a very bonding session for the whole family round the TV, and that's what you do all day. Now, as you can see, both of them are really looking forward to Christmas. Both of them expect their Christmases to be adhered to because that's what they do. But perhaps if neither of them have ever expressed this in any way, when Christmas Day comes, you can imagine both of them are going to really hate what the other one does until they learn to compromise and learn to discuss what they want Christmas to be. So this is a little bit what I'm talking about on this video, about how to unlearn your parents' relationship and what it taught you so that you can navigate your own relationships as an adult or going into adulthood with much more aplomb. Our parents, so excuse me, I'm in my early 50s, so my parents were very Victorian. So children were seen and not heard. You never made a fuss, you certainly didn't put your head above the parapet, you didn't disagree with anyone. It was all about what you looked like on the outside, and I am generalising wildly, but you can imagine the sort of children that were brought up by parents who were very Victorian are probably quite quiet and don't know that they've got the right to have a voice, etc, etc, etc. So unlearning the ways that our parents taught us about relationships. So we can easily look at our parents and make a list of all the traits that they do. So what I suggest, if this is a video that is really talking to you and you want to learn how to have better relationships, write down all the ways that they would sort out the finances. Who would be responsible for making the decisions in the relationship? Did they talk to each other? How did they fight? How did they make up? How did they have fun together, if at all? Was there any respect? Was there any honouring? Was there any allowing the other one to make mistakes? So there I'm talking about perfectionism. And just make a list of like 20 odd questions that you would ask your parents if you could, and then go through the list and think about, okay, so from memory, Mum acted like this and it really isn't how I want to act in my relationships as an adult. Or Mum had this behaviour and it was just so cool. It was really, really honouring and beautiful, and I want to be more like that. Not that you are ever going to be your mother, so one of the things you need to do is learn who you are, etc, etc. But this video is about unlearning what you've been taught about relationships. So if there was a complete lack of listening in your childhood, How can you learn to listen? How can you learn to be present? Now, I'm sure there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube that can teach you how to be in the now and how to be with someone and be present. And I think listening is one of the most wonderful things that we can do to another human being. Just do for another human being, not to, but just really listen to their story. Complete listening in a very open-hearted way is just it's so healing. It's wonderful. But if you continually in your relationship are sulking, or I had a very good friend whose husband didn't talk to her many days in a row because he was sulking. I'm not sure I'd be able to cope with that after my childhood, but yeah, and it led to really real problems in their relationship. So if there is a behaviour that you're demonstrating that you would like to change, or you're aware that your partner is demonstrating a behaviour that is reminding you of one of your parents, then the healing work that you need to do is always with you. It's always about me. So what can I do to heal my own behaviour, but also what can I do to help my partner see that this really causes me emotional upsets and triggers me and brings up childhood stuff, and we need to sit down in a rational, non-emotional way. We pick our moments so that it's not going to be loaded with, you know, we're not drunk, or we're not angry, or we're not sulking. Just, okay, is now a good time to discuss this? We need to maybe approach this subject where you're not talking to me for days on end and I'm finding that really challenging. What can we do to change that? Why do you do it? Let me understand you, etc, etc, etc. So I think I've talked about everything that I wanted to say just there. There are so many ways that our parents have imprinted onto us how we should behave, because that's how they learned to behave, quite possibly, or that's how they're coping with their own demons, or that's just how they decided to behave. And often one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is to really unlearn behaviour that's nothing to do with us and learn good behaviour that helps us have better relationships and get on better with our fellow man. So in the journey of learning who you are and how you can be a better version of yourself, unlearning, I think, is one of the most important aspects, because often we are trying to live our life with someone else's glasses on, and perhaps that's affecting our sight. That was a really bad analogy, but there we are. But yes, we need to really learn what our own behaviours are, and whether or not we like them or we need to change them. So I really hope this has been helpful. Evidently, if you are looking for some help for perhaps healing some of the traits that you consider untenable within your own behaviour, then please do get in touch if you like me to help you with that. Certainly Body Talk can help people to change, especially if you're trying to get rid of lots of emotional triggers. You have lots and lots of stuck emotions and they're really holding you back, anything like that, then please get in touch. My website, as I say, is spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk, and I look forward to hearing from you. I really hope this was helpful, and enjoy the rest of your day.